Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today we're tackling cyberbullying,
Oh, wow.
but we're going beyond the usual headlines.
Okay.
We're going to be exploring a German novel. It's called Gegen Strom des Cybermobbings. It translates to Emma Against the Current of Cyberbullying.
Interesting title.
Yeah, and we'll also be using some real-world advice and resources from the author's website, JW Sicherheitsgeschichten, JW Safety and Security.
Cool. So we've got fiction and facts.
Exactly. We're going to see the emotional side of cyberbullying through Emma's story, but then we'll ground it in reality.
I like that approach. Makes it much more relatable.
So Emma, she's this creative young girl.
Okay.
And she has this blog. It's like her safe space.
Makes sense. A lot of people use social media for that.
Exactly. She posts her poetry, drawings, all sorts of stuff.
It's like her own little world.
But, like we see so often, that world becomes a target.
Oh, no.
It starts with some mean comments on her blog, the typical internet trolls.
Yeah, sadly, that's pretty common.
But then it escalates, like way too fast.
What happened?
People start spreading these manipulated photos of her online.
Ugh, that's awful.
It's like her safe space is totally violated.
And this is where the line between online and offline gets blurry.
Exactly. It's not just happening on a screen anymore.
Right. It starts to affect every part of her life.
At school, she gets her stuff vandalized. Rumors are going around.
Oh, gosh, that's terrible.
And then she even gets physically pushed around in the hallways.
That's like constant fear and anxiety.
And it makes it so hard to ask for help.
People feel so alone.
Emma keeps it all to herself for a while.
Yeah, that's common too.
But thankfully, she finally confides in her art teacher, Mr. Berger.
He sounds like a good guy.
He really steps up. He listens to Emma. He validates her feelings.
That's so important.
And he actually does something about it.
Like what?
He helps her document everything, gets her parents involved, and contacts the school.
Wow. That's a turning point.
It shows how crucial it is to have someone who believes you and is willing to fight for you.
It's not just brushing it off like it's nothing.
And Mr. Berger uses art as a way to get the whole class talking about cyberbullying.
That's interesting. How does he do that?
He has the students do these creative projects, expressing their thoughts and feelings.
I like that. It's a different way to approach a difficult topic.
Yeah, and they even put on this school-wide exhibition with all the artwork.
So the whole school is involved.
It really gets everyone thinking and talking about it.
That's awesome.
And get this, some of the bullies who were targeting Emma,
yeah.
they come up to her after seeing the exhibition and they apologize.
Wow, really?
Yeah, they're like, we're so sorry, we didn't realize how much we were hurting you.
Sometimes people just don't make the connections.
It's like that aha moment where they finally see the impact of their actions.
That's powerful.
It changes the whole atmosphere at school.
It makes it more supportive.
But Emma doesn't stop there.
Of course not.
She takes her blog and turns it into a platform.
Okay.
It's called Digital Helden, which means digital heroes.
So she goes from victim to activist.
Yeah, she's like, this is a global issue. We need to do something bigger.
I can only imagine the challenges she faces.
Like what kind of challenges?
Well, think about it. She's now dealing with people from all over the world.
True.
Different cultures, different languages.
Yeah, and different laws about cyberbullying too.
It's a huge undertaking.
So how does she handle all of that?
She starts by getting volunteers to translate the platform.
Smart move.
Makes it accessible to more people.
And then she works with organizations and lawyers.
To make sure the information is accurate for each country.
Wow. She's really committed.
Digital Helden becomes this global resource.
But I'm curious about the content moderation.
Yeah, that's got to be tough.
How do they keep the platform safe while still allowing for free speech?
Well, they decide to develop an AI-powered tool to help with that.
AI. Wait, hold on. That sounds kind of scary.
I know, it raises some ethical questions.
Like who decides what counts as cyberbullying?
Right, and what about bias in the algorithms?
The book acknowledges those concerns.
They know it's a delicate balance.
So what do?
They bring in data privacy experts and focus on transparency.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
But it can't just be about the technology, right?
You're right. They launch a big educational campaign alongside the AI.
What's that about?
Teaching people about responsible technology use and digital citizenship.
Makes sense. It's about giving people the tools to be good online citizens. But what about the real world? Cyberbullying doesn't just happen online.
That's true, and Digital Helden recognizes that.
So do they do anything to address that?
They create this amazing program called Helden der Empathie.
What does that mean?
It means Heroes of Empathy.
I love that.
It encourages schools around the world to develop projects that promote empathy, and respect.
Wow, that's cool. Like what kind of projects?
Everything. Plays about cyberbullying, workshops on digital etiquette,
It's about getting young people actively involved.
creating a more positive environment both online and offline.
Okay, but I have a feeling not everyone is on board with Digital Helden.
You're right, there's always going to be some pushback.
What happens?
This group emerges, they call themselves Die Wahrheitsfaktor,
What does that mean?
the Truth Guardians.
Okay.
They accuse Digital Helden of promoting censorship.
Oh, so they're like free speech absolutists?
Yeah, they're worried about limiting freedom of expression.
Oh, sounds like there's going to be conflict.
Definitely, it sets the stage for a big showdown.
I'm on the edge of my seat. What happens next?
Well, we'll have to dive into that in part 2 of our deep dive.
You got it. Stay tuned. Okay, so last time we left off with Digital Helden and Die Wahrheitsvektor about to clash.
Yeah, it's that age-old debate, you know?
Safety versus free speech.
Exactly. How do you find that balance online? It's a tough one.
So let's break down this debate a bit.
Okay, sounds good.
On one side, we have Emma representing Digital Helden,
Right? And she's coming from personal experience.
having been cyberbullied herself.
Exactly. She knows how damaging it can be.
It's not just words on a screen.
It affects everything. Your mental health, your relationships.
Like we saw with Emma, it impacted her whole life, even offline.
Right. It went way beyond just mean comments.
So her argument is that moderation is crucial,
To create a safe online environment.
especially for young people who are often the most vulnerable.
Make sense? So what about the other side?
Dr. Voss, speaking for Die Wahrheitsvektor,
She's all about free speech.
and she's worried that too much moderation could lead to censorship.
That's a valid concern.
It's that slippery slope argument. Where do you draw the line?
Right. When does protecting people turn into silencing dissenting voices?
It's a tough question.
Dr. Voss argues that even offensive speech should be allowed.
As long as it doesn't incite violence or harm,
She believes that open dialogue is essential for a free society.
even if it makes some people uncomfortable.
It's about hearing different perspectives, even if you don't agree with them.
So we had these two very different viewpoints.
Both with valid points.
It's about finding that middle ground where everyone feels safe, but also free to express themselves.
That's the ideal, but how do you actually get there?
Well, Emma does something pretty unexpected.
Oh, what's that?
Instead of shutting down the debate, she invites Dr. Voss and Die Wahrheitsvektor to work together.
Wow, that's bold.
She's like, let's find a solution that works for everyone.
It takes a lot of maturity to do that.
She recognizes that it's not about one side winning.
It's about collaboration, finding common ground.
So do they actually manage to work together?
Surprisingly, yes. They formed this working group.
Made up of people from both sides.
And experts in ethics and law.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
You'd think so, but it actually works.
Really?
They have some tough conversations, but they eventually come up with a set of moderation guidelines.
That everyone can agree on.
Exactly. And the key is transparency.
So everyone knows the rules.
And they create a user council.
What's that?
It's a group of users who get to have a say in how the platform is moderated.
So it's not just a top-down approach.
The community has a voice.
I like that. It gives people ownership.
And along with these internal changes, Emma launches a new campaign,
What's it called?
Brücken der Verständigung,
Meaning.
bridges of understanding.
That's beautiful.
It's all about raising awareness about free speech and responsible online communication.
It's like they're turning the debate into an opportunity to educate people.
Exactly. They're not just arguing, they're taking action.
What kind of things do they do as part of this campaign?
They host events, panel discussions, workshops.
Bringing in experts from all sides.
Even some of their former critics.
They're really walking the walk.
Putting their money where their mouth is.
So does it make a difference?
It does.
Yeah.
The whole atmosphere on Digital Helden changes.
In what way?
Discussions become more respectful even when people disagree.
People are actually listening to each other.
It's a more positive environment overall.
That's what you want to see.
It shows that real change is possible.
And it's not just limited to Digital Helden.
Right. Emma's work starts to get international recognition.
She's invited to speak at conferences, share her story.
It's amazing how she's gone from victim to global advocate.
It's inspiring, but it's
Yeah.
important to remember that this is a fictional story.
Right. It's based on real issues, but it's still a story.
So how do we bridge the gap between fiction and reality?
That's where the practical advice and resources from the author's website come in.
Okay, let's talk about that. It's crazy to think that we've reached the final part of our deep dive already.
I know, right? It feels like we just started.
Time flies when you're having fun. and tackling serious issues.
So true, but we've covered so much ground already.
From Emma's personal story to those big picture questions about online safety and freedom of speech.
And we've explored some really practical advice and resources too.
Yeah, and I think the key takeaway for me is that we all have a responsibility here.
To combat cyberbullying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not someone else's problem to solve.
It's a societal issue that requires a collective effort.
We can't just sit back and hope it goes away.
We need to be proactive in protecting ourselves and others.
And in speaking out against cyberbullying whenever we see it.
And thankfully, we're not alone in this fight.
There are so many resources available to help us.
We've talked about the author's website, but there are also organizations like the Cyberbullying Research Center.
And stopbullying.gov.
And they offer tons of information and support.
And they're not just for victims of cyberbullying.
Right. They have resources for parents, educators, anyone who wants to learn more.
It's about empowering ourselves with knowledge so we can take action.
The more we understand about cyberbullying, the better equipped we are to address it.
One thing that really stood out to me was the importance of empathy.
Oh, absolutely.
It seems like so many of the solutions we've discussed, both in the book and in the real world, come back to empathy.
It makes sense when you think about it.
Cyberbullying often happens online, where there's that distance between people.
It's easier to be mean when you're hiding behind a screen.
It's like people forget that there's a real person on the other end of those messages.
Someone who's being hurt by their words.
So anything we can do to encourage empathy, to remind people of the human connection, is crucial.
Like that Held Under Empathy campaign, using art and creativity to teach young people about empathy.
It's brilliant. It's not just about rules and lectures. It's about tapping into something deeper.
That emotional connection.
And I keep thinking back to that debate about freedom of speech versus protection from harm.
That was a tough one. So many layers.
It's such a difficult balance to find.
But I thought the solution they came up with in the book was really interesting.
Working together to create transparent moderation guidelines.
With input from the users themselves.
It's a reminder that these issues aren't black and white.
There's no easy answer. It requires a nuanced approach.
And ultimately, it's about creating online spaces where people feel safe to express themselves without being harassed.
That's the goal.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one message you want our listeners to take away?
I'd say it's this. We all have the power to make a difference.
In combating cyberbullying?
Exactly. It starts with our own choices, how we interact with others online, how we respond when we see something wrong.
It's about being an upstander, not a bystander.
And remembering that even small actions can have a big impact.
Emma's story is a perfect example of that. One person can spark a movement. So let's all be a force for good online.
Let's create a digital world where everyone feels safe, respected, and empowered to share their voice.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey. We hope you learned something new.
And that you'll continue the conversation about cyberbullying in your own communities.
We all have a role to play in making the internet a better place.
Let's be the change we want to see.
Until next time.